What if one line, just one joke delivered differently than ever before, could bring down one of television's most revolutionary comedies? It was a night in October 1956. The television landscape was an Eden of suburban perfection, a world of tidy lawns and cardigan-wearing dads. But in a live studio in New York, a single, cramped apartment set was redefining American comedy. The line was a catchphrase, a punchline, something viewers had heard dozens of times. But the way Jackie Gleason delivered it that night was anything but comedy. The audience didn't laugh. They froze. Sponsors panicked. And just weeks later, the Honeymooners, the show that changed sitcoms forever, was gone. Today, we uncover the story TV executives tried to bury, the rise, the scandal, and the lasting shadow of one of television's most influential shows. To understand the impact of the Honeymooners, you first have to understand the world it entered. The 1950s was a decade of profound contradiction. The end of World War II had ushered in a new era of prosperity, and for the first time, a large, stable middle class was flocking to the suburbs. Television was the new cultural gatekeeper, and its primary job was to sell this dream. Shows like Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best didn't just entertain. They presented a curated, idealized vision of American life. The dads were wise, the mothers were always smiling, and the kids learned a tidy moral lesson by the end of every episode. These shows were designed to be reassuring, to provide a sense of order in a world still recovering from war and grappling with the looming threat of the Cold War. But a deeper anxiety simmered beneath the surface. The Red Scare, fueled by Senator Joseph McCarthy, had created a climate of suspicion and fear. Artists, writers, and actors were hounded by accusations of communist sympathies. Careers could be, and were, destroyed by a single whisper. Networks and advertisers, terrified of controversy, played it safe. Television became a sanitized, risk-averse medium. And then, there was Jackie Gleason, a man who was anything but safe. Jackie Gleason's life didn't begin with glamour. It began in Brooklyn, 1916. His father, Herbert, a man with his own demons, abandoned the family when Jackie was only 9. His mother, May, a devout Catholic, worked menial jobs that barely kept them afloat. Their apartment was a microcosm of a working-class existence, cramped, worn, and unforgiving. Jackie, though, had an escape: humor. He was a natural observer, a sponge for the raw, unfiltered reality of his world. On the street corners and stoops of Brooklyn, he mimicked the voices of neighbors, priests, and policemen. He studied the defeated slouch of tired men, the sharp tongue of women holding families together. He absorbed every mannerism, every quirk. These weren't just characters. They were his life's encyclopedia. This upbringing created a man of profound contradictions. He was charismatic and generous, but also tempestuous and volatile. He was a master of his craft, but he despised rehearsal and structure. He was an artist who channeled his deepest insecurities into his work. And it was that very authenticity that would make him a star. By his 20s, Gleason was working the nightclub circuit. His act was a throwback to vaudeville, a mix of stand-up, physical comedy, and larger-than-life presence. But Hollywood couldn't figure him out. He was too big, too brash, too unpredictable for the tidy roles of the studio system. Then, television arrived. The new medium was a wild, untamed frontier. Live broadcasts were a high-wire act, and they needed personalities who could command a room without a safety net. They needed someone who could improvise, who could thrive on the energy of an audience, and who had a built-in, pre-packaged charisma. Gleason was perfect. In 1950, he landed a hosting gig on Cavalcade of Stars on the struggling Dumont network. And it was here, almost by accident, that the world met the bus driver from Brooklyn. Ralph Cramden was born from a brief sketch, a simple idea, but he resonated with an audience hungry for something real. The early Ralph was raw, angry, and impatient, a bus driver with a short temper and big dreams. Unlike the polished, cardigan-wearing dads of the era, Ralph was working class, broke, and constantly frustrated. He was a man who saw the American dream from the wrong side of the tracks, and he was perpetually trying to hustle his way in. And he wasn't alone. By his side was Alice, his wife, who never let him win. Their sparring wasn't slapstick. It was a battle of wills that felt startlingly real. For the first time, TV was showing arguments that felt like they could happen in anyone's kitchen. The shouting wasn't just for laughs, it was a release, a reflection of the emotional and economic struggles faced by the working class. This dynamic was revolutionary. Critics at the time didn't know how to categorize it. It was too raw to be a conventional sitcom, too funny to be pure drama. It existed in a new space, and the laughter it generated wasn't just at Ralph's blunders. It was the laughter of recognition. Audiences saw themselves. The raw energy of the early sketches was thanks, in no small part, to the chemistry between Gleason and his original Alice, Pert Kelton. She was a sharp-tongued actress who gave as good as she got, but in 1952, she vanished from the role. The official story? Health issues. The real story was something darker. The 1950s were a time of paranoia. The Cold War was in full swing, and Senator Joseph McCarthy's anti-communist crusade had created a climate of fear. The infamous blacklist was in effect. Kelton's husband, actor Ralph Bell, had alleged ties to communist groups. In that climate of fear, it was enough. Without a trial, without proof, Kelton was gone, a casualty of a political purge. Replacing her was nearly impossible. Too soft, and audiences wouldn't buy the constant bickering. Too harsh, and the comedy would turn ugly. The role required a delicate balance of strength and vulnerability. Enter Audrey Meadows. At first, she was rejected. The producers said she was too glamorous. But Meadows knew the role was hers. She fought back, not with words but with an image. She hired a photographer to take pictures of her at dawn, just as she woke up. No makeup, hair uncombed, dressed in a simple housecoat. She had the photographer snap photos of her at a kitchen sink, her posture conveying the weariness of a woman who had spent her life on her feet. When Gleason saw her test photos, he knew instantly, that's Alice. Meadows' calm, controlled delivery was the perfect counterpoint to Ralph's explosive temper. She didn't shout back, she waited, then cut him down with one perfect withering line. Their chemistry was electric. While Ralph and Alice were the heart of the show, it was the addition of a third voice that completed the formula. Art Carney's portrayal of Ed Norton, the lovable, dim-witted sewer worker, was a stroke of genius. Norton wasn't just a sidekick, he was a crucial comedic buffer. When Ralph's temper flared, Norton's obliviousness would diffuse the situation. His physical comedy, from his graceful dance moves to the bizarre rituals he performed before speaking, was the perfect foil to Ralph's frustrated bluster. But Carney's performance was also a masterclass in subtlety. The character was kind and loyal, a genuine friend to Ralph despite all his faults. This provided the show with a warmth that balanced the constant tension. Norton's sincerity and unwavering admiration for Ralph, even when he was at his most unhinged, was a silent testament to their deep bond. And like Gleason, Carney drew from his own life. The famous hand-waving ritual that Norton would perform before writing or signing something was an imitation of a nervous habit his own father had. It was a detail so specific, so real, that it transcended comedy and became a fundamental part of the character. In 1955, the popularity of the sketches led to an unprecedented deal. CBS offered Gleason a contract to produce The Honeymooners as its own weekly series. Gleason agreed, but with one condition. He wanted to film the show using a new technology called the electronicam. This system used television cameras to capture the live performance directly onto film, allowing for a superior picture quality while preserving the raw, spontaneous energy of live TV. This meant no retakes. Every flub, every improvised line, every moment of genuine chemistry or genuine tension was on film. The laughter wasn't canned. It was the real, spontaneous reaction of a live studio audience. This was both the show's greatest strength and its most dangerous flaw. It created an intimacy and a sense of immediacy that no other show could match. But it also meant there was no safety net. The actors, particularly Gleason, were under immense pressure. The grueling schedule of producing a live half-hour show every single week, with minimal rehearsal, was an exhausting high-wire act. Gleason, a man who famously never rehearsed more than was absolutely necessary, was a demanding boss. He would often show up minutes before airtime, run through the blocking once, and then demand perfection. Art Carney, a master of physical comedy, thrived on this unpredictability. But Audrey Meadows, a perfectionist, sometimes expressed her discomfort with the sheer emotional weight of the roles. Still, the show thrived. It was a smash hit, a cultural phenomenon. It seemed unstoppable. That is, until one night when everything went wrong. The date was December 10th, 1955. The episode was titled The Deciding Vote. The setup was classic Honeymooners. Ralph, full of self-importance, believes his single vote could swing a local Raccoon Lodge election. The audience was ready to laugh. Then came the line, bang, zoom, straight to the moon. But this time, Gleason didn't deliver it with comedic bluster. His tone was sharper, his eyes were colder. His body language, leaning in, the fist raised, felt real. Too real. The usual comedic bluster was gone, replaced by a chilling, almost genuine aggression. The audience froze. Silence. No laughter, no applause, just an uncomfortable, echoing quiet that hung in the air of the studio. For the first time, Ralph Kramden didn't look like a harmless blowhard. He looked dangerous. In an era when domestic violence was a taboo topic, a subject swept under the rug of polite society, that moment felt uncomfortably raw. The very honesty that made the show revolutionary was suddenly its greatest liability. The cameras kept rolling, but the damage was done. Sponsors panicked. They were spending millions to associate their products with wholesome American families, not with moments that hinted at domestic strife. Critics, who had once praised the show's honesty, now called the scene too raw. Letters started pouring into CBS, not of praise, but of concern. Behind the scenes, the network was in turmoil. The ratings, while still respectable, had begun to slip slightly. Advertisers were growing wary of Gleason's unpredictability. That single line, delivered with an unsettling weight, became the catalyst for a decision that was already in the making. Within weeks, The Honeymooners was gone. No farewell episode, no warning to the public. The show was there one week, and the next, it was gone. Officially, CBS blamed the cancellation on Gleason himself, stating he wanted to return to the live, variety show format. But unofficially, it was clear. Ralph had crossed a line. The risk was no longer worth the reward. For Gleason, the cancellation was devastating. Ralph wasn't just a character, he was Jackie's alter ego, a piece of his soul. To preserve control, Gleason did the unthinkable. He secretly bought the rights back to the 39 filmed episodes. "If anyone was going to bury Ralph Cramden," he said, "it would be me." For decades, the classic 39 were the only episodes of The Honeymooners anyone had ever seen. The thousands of earlier sketches from the variety show days were presumed lost to time. But in the 1980s, an astounding discovery was made. The sketches, filmed live and then recorded on Kinescope, had been stored away in Gleason's personal archives. They were released as the lost episodes, and they completely reshaped our understanding of the show. Audiences saw a different Trixie, a different Alice, and a more unrefined, even more aggressive Ralph. The sketches showed the show's evolution, from raw, improvisational chaos to the tightly scripted, theatrical masterpiece of the classic 39. It was a treasure trove for fans, a chance to see a show they thought they knew with a fresh pair of eyes. The story of The Honeymooners might have ended there, a cautionary tale of a show that flew too close to the sun. But the story of the classic 39 episodes was just beginning. In the 1970s, local stations began airing the reruns in syndication. The show, which had only been seen by a fraction of America, suddenly became a nightly staple. What once felt risky, now felt refreshing. The raw, working-class setting and the brutal honesty of the marital arguments were exactly what modern audiences loved. The very moments that scared sponsors became the reason fans embraced it. Ralph and Alice's bickering became the blueprint for TV couples to come. From Archie and Edith Bunker in All in the Family to the family battles in Roseanne, and even the animated chaos of The Simpsons, all traced their DNA back to Ralph and Alice. Bang, zoom became Americana, quoted in cartoons, sitcoms, and political speeches. The infamous line that ended the show was now just a fond, nostalgic memory, a testament to the power of a performer who was so committed to his craft, he was willing to blur the line between art and reality. Jackie Gleason's Ralph Cramden was a walking contradiction. A man who was flawed, frustrated, and sometimes frightening, yet at his core, desperate for love and respect. He was, in a way, television's first anti-hero. The Honeymooners proved that comedy didn't have to be glossy or perfect. It could be real. It could be raw. And sometimes, it could be too real for its own good. Decades later, the laughter still echoes from that one-room apartment. But so does the uncomfortable silence of that one unforgettable night. A moment that didn't just end a show, but cemented it as a turning point in the history of American television.